Recording in progress.
I'd like to welcome everybody to the September edition of the West Suburban Computer Club. Our format is open forum, and then after the open forum, we go into a short 5-minute presentation or more by Mr. Ron. And then after that, we'll break into our topic of the evening, which would be shopping for a mini PC. That being said, I'd like to open up the floor to the first question of the evening. Who has a question for the group? Okay, there was a discussion earlier that I wasn't paying attention to, but Bob, what was that discussion?
I ran into an issue.
Okay.
With the August cumulative update, Windows 11 Pro 24H2. I have an SSD in an enclosure. I want to see if I can share something. What I want to do is switch my camera. And this may or may not work.
Oh, the tree light.
No, what I want to do is I want to take my zoom and kill the background. Video settings. Virtual backgrounds, none. Okay. What you are seeing here is an external enclosure containing an SSD. What you are seeing here is the connection to the front end of my tower PC. This sometimes comes loose and causes issues, communication issues, and so it comes up as unknown device in the device manager. This, internally, I once had to tighten up. That I checked, but after the August update, I had an issue where my drive was coming up as, oh crud, just a minute. Let's try that. Okay, my drive was coming up as an unknown device with a yellow triangle. This is a known issue with certain drives that have Phison controllers. And you've got to remember, in an enclosure like I showed you, the enclosure may have a controller, which mine does, and the drive has a controller. Mine's one of the Samsung Evo high-end drives, which often do have the Phison controllers, sometimes surprisingly, shockingly cheap Phison controllers. So there is a growing bit of evidence that, though it's rare, there can be interaction between this update and the controller. And if you are left in a condition where you think the controller is in File Explorer, you could literally fry the controller and or the drive. You could mess up the partition structure. You could mess up the data structures. And it's no fun dealing with any of that. So what you do, if you realize this is a problem, in fact, anybody doing that August update, you should have already done this, but what should have happened is you realized something was going on. If you did, like I got the warning, shut down the computer. Now, when I turn off the computer normally and shut down, this does not power down the USB ports. So I had to hit the power switch and wait a couple of minutes. Then turn the power switch back on, then boot up, and everything cleared up. And if you haven't damaged the drive or the controller, this should work. So that was issue number one. Anybody?
Bob, is this because this is an external drive, or it doesn't matter with this update?
Controller.
I've heard more complaints about USB connected drives, but it could be an internal drive. It could be any drive.
Okay.
If it's an SSD and has one of these Phison controllers, you can look up the information on your drive. You can get hardware information through Windows. Tim would know more about that than I would.
Yeah, I've published many articles already on CFCS's Discord bulletin board, and everybody's denying any responsibility. Everybody, including Trump, says it ain't my problem. I know of nothing. Anyway, I have seen some reputable techs who create professional YouTube videos that have done live tests, recorded, and sent out because they were in the middle of a different recording when everything crapped out. And they have big stock of the various NVMe M.2 drives, and they had to check to find out what drives they had on stock that had the Phison controller versus something else. And they got they did a little demo of the failure, and then on another drive everything went smoothly. So it's really definitely something to do with the Phison controller. The sad part is the doggone controller. We don't know if it's a case of overloading the controller, causing it, say, mass confusion and crashing, or that it's caused by an overheating situation, because we don't know those people who are having the problem whether or not they're using a thermal pad and heat sink on their drive, and two, that they are certain the airflow is more than adequate to keep the drive cool, because NVMe drives are notorious for getting hot. And I have some portable containers myself that I have drives that I put in, and trust me, the case, if you're really putting a load on it, say a big transfer like of a lot of videos or something like that, you're talking about that little sucker really getting on the toasty side. You don't want to
Yeah,
hold it.
you can make a grilled cheese on some of mine.
Yeah.
By the way, it's not all the Phison controllers.
No.
It's only the ones that are relatively cheap. And this may be one other reason why these guys aren't finding it. Their newer controllers are okay. Their newer firmware is okay. I found that there was a warning about drivers. The USB root hub driver suddenly turned into unknown USB device. So I suspect there's some driver involvement.
There could be. Don't get me wrong. Drivers can give you plenty of headaches, and that's not a joke, because they're either not the version that is appropriate for your computer hardware and operating system. It can be a bug in the software. It can be a bug in the firmware that's required to interpret the computer's instructions to do a read or write or rewrite, etc. That's why driver updates are very important, even though they can cause you a headache. The big thing there is to make sure your restore point is active, because Microsoft turned it off in version 10 and kept it off in 11. You have to go in and manually turn it on. Make sure you have only a modest amount of storage space assigned. And Microsoft, when it does an update, will initially create a restore point for you. So if something goes wrong, even if you have to come up in what I call emergency mode, where something went wrong and it knows it, it will give you, under troubleshooting advanced options, the ability to take a restore point and have it go back and that might solve the problem.
Is there anyone in this group not know where to turn on the restore point function? Raise your hand and let us know.
All you got to do is go into the search, put in restore point,
Yeah.
and it should bring up the exact site.
Okay.
And then you have to, if it says everything is off, then you have to go to the create to be able to turn it on and set the storage amount. This default has always been like 10%. And for most of us, that's way overboard. If you get 5 to 8 gigabytes, that's more than adequate, and you'll be able to have several restore points.
Yeah, 1% is more than enough.
Well, it depends on the size of the drive, honestly. And the bad part about the restore points that a lot of people don't comprehend, these are not backups. These are short-term insurance policy. If you ever knew anything about the insurance industry, they have short-term policies that are covering just a short period of time for a specific reason. And then they have long-term ones like on your house and car, even though you can cancel them at any time and go with somebody else. So generally speaking, a real backup goes through backup programs, not the one that's in Microsoft, because Microsoft said in 2019, do not use that internal backup. It's way out of date. It hasn't been upgraded or touched in more than a decade. So stop using that, even though it's included. They want you to use a third-party program. So do that. Make sure you check to see if that backup program has verification. Some of them give you automatic verification as soon as the backup is done. And if it says everything went perfect, successful, you're okay. If you don't turn on the verification, it's like using that built-in backup program. Maybe it worked correctly, and then when you need it, you find out it's junk. It won't work. And if you don't have some kind of a backup program, several of them, you may have to do a clean install, and tough luck.
Okay, shall we move on to a new question, new direction? No questions from the group. Dennis, you got anything going on? No. And Tom, it's been a while. No. Okay, this is good. This is good. So that being said, we might be able to just jump right into our presentation by Mr. Ron Freeman.
Yeah, I don't think we need to say anything about the little annoyance that the August update left me with. One of my accounts, a standard user account, I could not log into it because there was this splash screen overlaying it that looked like ransomware, and it was from Microsoft demanding that I make it into a Microsoft Cloud account, do their backup to the cloud, and all these other things, or else they wouldn't let me into the account. No way to X out of it. I had to hit the power switch and turn off the PC. Hopefully it won't appear again in 3 days.
Well, if you've used certain features in 11, you may have reward points on your Microsoft account. And for 1,000 points, which is about the equivalent of $1, you get a year's additional support.
Yeah, for Windows 10, but
right.
I have Windows 11.
And they want you to do the backup. I haven't seen that yet on any of my machines.
That's what it was. A full screen overlay to move over to Microsoft account, Microsoft Cloud backup, etc., OneDrive for storage, and they just would not let it go. And the administrator account, nothing.
Well, if is your administrator account local or attached to Microsoft?
Local,
Yeah,
as
okay,
is
that's why you didn't get a message there.
the user account is also local.
It is local?
Yep, they wanted me to switch.
Hmm,
Hmm.
that's a new one.
Well, you had the
Haven't
right
come across that yet.
way to get out of it. Power off.
Yeah, because I'm not going to tell them do this again in 3 days.
Right.
But this is just bringing me down to where I'm not too happy still using Windows. But then
Okay.
again, it's not my daily driver, my daily operating system anyway.
Right.
I've already gone over to Linux. I did get something in my Chrome browser, but I think that was from an extension. Okay, that's it.
Okay. Any other last questions for the group?
I've updated to that back in August 12th, and I haven't had any problems.
Well, that's good to hear.
I've noticed it on one of my machines. Only one was checked. Well, I checked several others. They didn't have that one. The one that did have the bad patch, supposedly, I haven't had a problem with.
Well, that's probably because we don't have the bad controllers.
Maybe, or
Okay.
maybe it's something to do with the machine that doesn't comply with the problem. Maybe it's, again, I'm not overloading it, I'm not playing games, and I am not overheating the drive. Those are all possibilities, besides a
Good.
bad driver or firmware.
All right. Any other comments on this? No. All right. I made an early introduction to Ron. Ron, would you like to take the floor?
No,
Where do you want me to take it?
yeah, we're not giving it away.
Oh, drat. I could use a new floor or an old floor. Well, greetings, everyone. We're on session 4 out of 5 on the wonderful world of upgrading Windows 10 to Windows 11. This session is about actually doing an upgrade of the PC that one has because it meets the qualifications that Microsoft says that are necessary to run Windows 11 on that computer. So whether you're running Windows 11 Home or Windows 11 Pro or Windows 11 Enterprise or Windows 11 EDU, which is basically Enterprise, this is what we're talking about: is going from Windows 10, whatever version you're running of Windows 10, to that same version of Windows 11, because your PC can handle it. So one of the things that I did is it takes a while to actually do this upgrade. I have to remember what it is. It's an upgrade, and way too long for one of our meetings. So I did record it, and we'll be speeding it up to about 30 to 60 times normal speed, so we can get through it sometime today. It does take about so depending on your processor, depending on how much memory you have, depending how fast your drives are, it can take well over an hour and a half to 2 hours to do this. Fortunately, it's not something you have to stare at the entire time. It's something where you can go out, have dinner, come back, be done, or do it overnight and finish it up the next day. And we'll see all that. So let's talk about the prep just before you do the update. Number one, and we mentioned this in just about every session we've done so far, make sure you know that you have an administrator username and password that you can log on with. You might need it when you're done, and once you do the update, upgrade, you may need to have it, and if you don't have it, your upgrade doesn't work right afterwards. Things like maybe a new driver is needed, or things like that. The next thing, make sure your BitLocker is off. If BitLocker is on, it's going to take a while to turn it off. And well, as part of the video, we'll kind of see where that BitLocker setting is. The other thing is if you're using partition-based compression, so you're like compressing your C drive, you're compressing your D drive, using Windows to do the compression, you're going to want to turn that off. But you can only really turn that off if you have enough space to uncompress everything. And I hope the reason you put compression on is because you don't have enough space on your hard drive. So that's just kind of having it out there that you may need to do something with that. So one of the things we've talked about in the past sessions is having one of these external USB drives. That's just a USB, standard USB drive. One thing you can do with that before you actually do the update is make a copy of your user profile. So if you have multiple people on a computer, it'll be in your C drive, generally speaking. It'll be in the users folder. You can take the entire users folder and drag it over to your drive as long as you're an administrator. You can't do it if you're not an administrator. You can drag your files or for your profile, but everyone else's profile you can't really touch. The next thing is make sure you run all your operating system updates, even though this is Windows 10. Make sure your operating system has got whatever updates it can still handle, that your apps have whatever updates they can handle, and that your drivers have whatever updates they can handle. You don't necessarily need the manufacturer's drivers if their drivers are available at Microsoft for the Microsoft operating system that you're working with. Generally, that will be fine. I have not run up a case where I absolutely need to have the manufacturer's drivers before doing the upgrade, especially since you're running Windows 10 anyhow, and almost all the drivers that were native to Windows 10 will work automatically in Windows 11. If you have an old driver that you have from your XP days or your Windows 7 days or your Windows 8 days, or if you were one of the lucky ones to have Windows 9, those may or may not work. And there was no Windows 9. So if you have one of those, you were scammed. Make sure your antivirus is off. So if you are running a third-party antivirus, make sure it's turned off. Make sure your if you're running Microsoft Defender, which is a nice, sweet little antivirus, anti-malware package, you can turn that off. You should turn that off as well. Make sure your OneDrive sync is off. You don't want to be syncing OneDrive while you're doing this upgrade. So make sure that's turned off, that you're not syncing. You may just want to kill the OneDrive service. Again, going back to this, if you have a backup software and you are really concerned how much you might lose, back up your system using the backup software. I still do use the Windows 7 backup to make a WIM file, which is a Windows image file for backup and recovery purposes. Yes, as Tim says, it doesn't verify that it works or anything. But, occasionally I'll use it in a bit. If everything else is copacetic with my system, I haven't had too much trouble relying on it to recover files from the image file. And that's it. I mean, you have that, you are ready to start the upgrade. And there's actually 3 different options to do an upgrade, what's called an in-place upgrade of your existing computer to Windows 11 from Windows 10 without having to have another computer or do anything. And we're going to kind of go through that now. I'm going to share a video. Alrighty, let's see here. Video. This looks like the right video. Share. All right, so you should be seeing my video now. Going back to August 18th. This is on a Windows 10 machine. And I'm going to get this started. Oh, let me get this little icon out of my way. All right, we're gonna get this started here. All right, and here you're gonna see I'm logging in as administrator. This is a good way to do the update, is to be logged in as administrator. That way, any weirdness that is in your personal profile isn't do it. Your personal profile might be an administrator profile, which is fine too. But I would recommend, if you can, be in an administrator mode. And here is what my Windows 10 desktop looks like. I have a few custom apps or proprietary apps that aren't part of Windows. I have some proprietary personal files, cleverly named New Microsoft Document and New Microsoft Spreadsheet. But it's basically a Windows 10 desktop. Notice that I use a solid color for my desktop background. This will come up later when we upgrade to Windows 11. And at this point here, we're just seeing, how does my system look when I start an app or something like that. We're going to go in and we're going to do one more last health check to make sure that this computer can run this. This is the PC Health Check app. We're going to download it again. It may already be there. I don't know when the last time you ran your PC Health Check. There may be a new version of it since then, and this is the opportunity here. And we're just going to go and use the PC Health Check here. It's telling me all about it, and I don't want to try Microsoft 365 for free, but they do have a link here to get the app. And so I'm getting the app. It's downloaded, as you can see in my downloads. I'm going to open up. It's an MSI file. It's just an executable, basically, that's going to install on my local machine. Let it install. As it runs through, it's going to be ready, and it's going to tell me, well, all right, let's run it. And so we'll click finish here, and it's going to run, and it's going to tell me check now if I can run Windows 11. And it says I can. Yippee! Let's look at some of the results here again. It does have the TPM. It is a processor. It's an 8th generation processor. It's 6 generations ago. We had 8 gigabytes of RAM, and we had 512 gigabytes of drive storage. And here I don't know what I'm doing, so I'm just kind of running through. Again, this is a video, so I didn't edit it out. We're looking at this. You can see in the lower right-hand corner and in the left-hand corner of your screen how much time we've taken up. If you go to Windows Update, you may actually have here the opportunity right then and there to do the upgrade to Windows 11. I turned mine off, told it to wait 7 days before I made this video. So it wasn't there. I checked for updates, still not there because I told it to wait. So we're going to go a different route to getting the update and putting it on the system. So this we're actually going to do by going to Microsoft website, and we're going to, let's see what, I don't remember the name off the top of my head. Yeah, I'm going to speed us up a little bit here. Oh, okay, there we go. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And this is a Windows 10 Pro. All right. So here we are at the website that you can get your download from. It's Microsoft.com, and you're really going to be looking in the directory English-GB /software-download /Windows 11. You can ignore all the rest of the stuff that's up there after with the question mark. That's all tracking information to track you. So you don't need any of that. So look at this. The first thing you'll see here is you can use the download assistant. You also have the opportunity here to download an image. And there may be a reason why you want to do this. I'm not going to do it that way for this demonstration because it requires more clicking that I didn't want to do. and you don't need it to actually do the update. But we'll let it run here for a little bit. And, you get to choose the language. So I would suggest not using the Chinese version of the ISO. It gives you your download options. I'm doing 64-bit because that's what I currently have installed, and it's downloading. This I will speed up. So it's a 5.5 gigabyte drive, and you can see here that we're running pretty quick downloading it. I happen to be downloading it on a fiber connection, so it's running relatively fast for download. And here we go. And here, alrighty, 33 seconds left. So it's going to download. And I'm going to have it there. I just downloaded it on my C drive. I didn't download it any place special. I could have downloaded it onto my USB drive if I wanted to, but I'm having it on the hard drive, which I'm actually going to end up upgrading. So I just wanted you to see this is here, but we're not going to use this. I'm showing it to you. We're not going to use it. We're actually going to use what was the very first option on the top of this page. Let's speed it up here a little bit. Very good. There we go. Oh, okay, so we're going to use, we don't want to create installation media. I don't care about that. We don't need it for what we're doing. You might need to do it if you had to do it a different way, but the way we're doing it, we don't need that. This is what we're going to use. We're going to use the Windows 11 installation assistant, and it's a great way of doing it. It's pretty much already pre-configured, ready to go for a system which is compatible and compatible with Windows 11 based on the PC Health Report. So here we go. I'm going to download it. Here it comes. It's real quick. There it is. I'm going to run it. I have to accept it and install it. And here it is downloading. So I'm going to speed this up. It doesn't run this fast when you're sitting here watching it. Okay, now it's verifying it. Yay. All right, now it's installing. All right, this is the part that takes forever. Notice I haven't had to touch anything. Once I started it, I'm actually going to speed this up to 64 times because this takes forever. It really slows down once you hit the 70% mark because now it's actually doing a lot of writing to the drive. This happened to be a standard hard drive, not a SSD drive. And again, it was an 8th generation i5 CPU. So it does take a while, and it takes longer and longer each percentage. I'm still running at 64 times speed, and it's just lotzing along here. As it goes through, fortunately, it gets to a certain point after 90%. So we're already at the 40-minute mark. This is going to go to the hour 30-minute mark to get this download done. We're almost at the 50-minute mark here. These last few percentages are, it's a good time to go out to dinner or, grab a lunch or watch the Bears game, whatever else is going on with your life. We're almost at an hour now. And you see these last percentages here are just sleepy time. There's something you can do. You can take a nap while this is going on. Okay, so we're at the 90% mark. We're at an hour 10. And so we got a little bit more to go. I'm going to go back to normal speed when we get close to the time this is supposed to change out. So one of the things, if you notice here, it says that the PC will automatically restart 30 minutes after this completes. There we go. Let's get this kind of moving here a little bit. Okay, so 30 minutes. So this is automatic. So again, I don't have to be around to reboot the computer. It's all being handled automatically. So whatever Microsoft did with this scripted installer, again, works fairly well. 19 out of 20 times, 95% of the time, this is going to work. If you have something kind of crazy, I'm sure that's going to happen sometime. We're at 92%. It's going to, let's go here. All right, so we're now back to normal speed. We've got about 2 more minutes to go, and we'll watch what happens when it gets ready to reboot. And again, your mileage may vary depending on how more modern your computer was than mine. And again, this was a mobile system, so it's even slower than a desktop system for the same generation of CPU. Okay, here we are. We're at 32 minutes. I'm going to speed this up maybe a little bit. Maybe maybe the water will come to boil. Maybe the grass will grow. Okay, we're at 1 hour and 33 into the installation. We did not have to sit through 1 hour and 33 minutes of this. Sometimes feels like this is the way my day goes. Oh, what happened to that day? Okay, great. All right, here we're coming. We're coming up to, let's go a little bit faster here. Okay, so we should be seeing it. Notice that we're at 92%. We jumped to 100%, and now the countdown clock starts for that 30 minutes. I'm not waiting. I actually started it myself. I actually came back to the screen and hit restart now when we hit the 25-minute mark. So I let it count down from 30 minutes to 25, and you'll see the standard complement of how Windows normally does a restart when it's got new installs happening for software or whatever. It's going on. Let's go a little bit faster here. I am impatient. Okay, here we go. So you're about to be signed out. Can't see that. And then I'm going to click on the close button whenever I get around to it. There it is, with my round to it. And there it goes, the restarting. We've seen that many times in the past when we're installing stuff. And it's going to completely shut down and restart. Speed things up because we don't need to wait for all that. There we are. It's now shut down. It's going to restart. Here we go. It's already at 62%. Again, we've seen this too when we're doing updates, that it comes back and you're not in the actual operating system yet. You're in this pre-operating system environment while it does updates. Here we are. We're almost at 100%. There we go. Now that starts, and I type in as administrator. The typical, things that happen when you log in for the first time on a new system. There we are. So we are now in Windows 11. Let's see. There are some things that it does not carry forward or forces you to address. One of them is your privacy settings, of which I don't like anything being sent to Microsoft. And here we are. Here's our desktop. This is what it will appear when your system first logs on as your administrator account, your password. Notice the taskbar at the bottom is the Windows 11 taskbar. But notice also on the left-hand side, my applications are there that I had. This is the new start menu for Windows 11. Let's move through this. So let's look at the system. I went to my settings, and I'm in my system settings about there's my computer name. It shows how much RAM, blah blah blah, that I have. Let's see what else it shows me here. It's showing me that I'm running Windows 11 Pro. It's running 24H2. So whatever Windows 10 doesn't do a 24H2. So it's obviously doing this. Things are installed here. And a little bit later, we'll even show it that it's already been activated. So everything is working pretty much as you would expect. Let's see here, product key and activation. I think I click on that. I don't want to do that at this time. By the way, I was not on a domain. I was just in a work group. This is not a domain join PC. Let's see here. Here we're looking again at BitLocker, and we can see here that BitLocker has been turned off. This was a laptop, by the way, and laptops normally in Windows 10 have BitLocker turned on. It's just a default condition. It's going to ask me here to restart the computer. I think I'm going to say no to that. Here we go. Let's see here. Let's scroll down. Where do I have it? That it is activated.
Ron, was that a home install or
no, Pro? It's Pro.
Pro.
Windows
Okay.
11 Pro or Windows 10 Pro. Okay. And notice this wasn't a real fast CPU. It's 8th generation, only 1.6 gigahertz speed. Let's see if I'm going to do anything else. I'm almost done with this. There we go. And there's my files. So I'm using Office 365. Again, it's a slightly new system, so it's going to double check with me. But notice the document opened up. Notice that it does not say activation required because it knows who I am. I do have a little thing here saying it doesn't know who I am quite because it logged in with a different account. I do need to the software is licensed to a different account, and it's not licensed on the system, but it's activated. So I'm not necessarily allowed to use it from that other address, and it's just warning me that no, not going to do that. But again, all my software is there, all my files are there, everything came across. If I open up a web browser, all my shortcuts are there, everything is there. I didn't have to move or copy or do. I will say you probably want to check your printers, make sure they're still working. That's something which you may have. You may have some proprietary hardware, like you're connected, your iPhone is connected or something like that. You may want to double check that. But again, this is you're pretty much set and ready to go. Remember we turned off virus protection. You're going to want to turn back on your virus protection as soon as you can after getting up. Make sure you don't leave yourself unprotected. So that's it. I wanted to show you there's a drawback to this system that we did here, which is the install direct from the web tool. I'm going to turn this. I'm going to stop this. All right. And the drawback is there's no undo feature. So once you've installed Windows 11 on this computer using the Internet Assistant that we used, there is no way to undo it. If you want to be able to go back to Windows 10 for some reason, there's no uninstall. You can't undo it when you use that. If you're really concerned about that, remember we downloaded an ISO file initially. that ISO file, if you install from that, which does have a few more keystrokes involved, and we're going to go look at a couple of them in a moment. If you do that, you have 10 days to uninstall your Windows 11 installation and go back exactly to the way you were with Windows 10. So just so that you know, it's there. Let me stop sharing and look at this other computer I have here. I'm going to go to a different camera. Here we go. All right. So this over here is the ISO file. And personally, you don't need to do this, but I did, is I mounted the ISO as a drive letter. I mapped it to drive letter D, D for DVD. And commonly, if you only have a single hard drive or a single partition, the DVD drive was usually the following letter. But anyway, I mounted it and I opened up this ISO file. And you'll notice when I open it up, I have a program here called setup.exe. This is the Windows 10, the Windows 11 downloaded ISO file for installation. And when I double click that, it will start the installation process. And we have 3 different options. So one of the things that you'll notice, it'll eventually get to the part saying ready to install. I'm just going to minimize this here. So it says ready to install. It's going to install Windows 11 Pro, which is what we wanted to do. One of the things you may want to do when you start it from the ISO file, it's going to ask you, do you want to download updates for Windows 11? I would recommend saying no to that. The Windows 11 that's being installed is 24H2, but it doesn't have all the other rigmarole, the updates to 24H2 since 2024. So it'll be a slightly faster install, and when you want to undo your install, it'll be a slightly cleaner undo if you decide to undo it. One of the options you see there is keep your personal files and apps. And I'm going to actually show what our options are here, because it might not come up this way. You can keep your personal files and apps. This is how you do an in-place upgrade. The other one is keep your personal files only. All the apps that you installed won't be there when you start up Windows in Windows 11, or get rid of all your profiles, all your users, all your apps, all your self-installed drivers, all that stuff, and just do the Windows 11 upgrade. I don't recommend that when you are using a computer which you already have, because nothing is as much fun as not having any of your files. Although, if you recall, I said to use your, oops, you can't see that because I'm using a different camera. Hang on a moment here. There we go. All right, so if you backed up to your handy dandy USB drive, then you could restore your files and you could restore your profile. I recommend that if you can, usually keep personal files and apps and let it ride. And again, once we say go with this, it's going to run for an hour, hour and a half, and just chug away. It may even take longer because it's a larger file. It's got to do things. Who knows? I didn't run that because I didn't want to run 2 installs for you. That let's see. I told you about checking your printers, and I talked that when you do an in-place upgrade with this, you do have an undo function. Within 10 days, you can uninstall Windows 11, and it will go back to the way your Windows 10 was configured. That's it. Any questions?
One thing I would like to say about using the ISO, it does take longer because it has to create the Windows.old files.
Yes. Well, yeah, it's doing that whole copy thing. And I'm not sure that The internet version doesn't do that as well, but I think when it's done, it deletes it all.
I don't think it even creates it.
Okay, all right.
So it uses less disk space.
Okay. Okay. I didn't check that while I was doing it. I could have. I didn't. Sorry.
Yeah, if your disk space is limited, you might consider
Okay.
that might be a consideration.
Okay.
Anybody
That's it.
else? Ron, that was a great presentation.
Thank you.
I
enjoyed it.
Thank you very much
What's
for doing it. Really appreciate it. Anyone got any questions for Ron? I want to know, how do I sideload this on a system with only 32 gigs of storage?
Good luck. 64
So
gigs
you
is
wipe
the
the
minimum.
disk clean, so you have more storage. You wipe it clean, get rid of everything, and do a regular install.
Install. Okay.
64 gigs is the minimum requirement for the storage, and a recommended 4 gigs on RAM memory.
Yeah, but you won't want to run Windows 11 in 4 gigs of RAM.
You don't even really want it in 8, but at least
I
it'll
understand.
run halfway decent in 8. And if you can go to 12 or 16, that's better.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ron. Anyone else want to?
I do have an option for you.
Yes.
That 32 gig side load. If you have another drive bay in your computer that you're going to put this on, install it on the other drive. Put another drive in there and install it on that. Can't really do that too much with a laptop, but if you have a desktop that has a spare drive bay, sure.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Ron. Harry? What, Harry?
That you had mentioned the old file, I've forgotten the exact name. If you're not going to turn it back to Windows 10, can you delete that at some point?
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's got a funny name. It's like Windows
.o.
.ol $ or something like that. You just it's one folder in your C drive, and you delete the whole thing and it's gone.
Actually, no. They recommend that you use a cleanup manager and run it.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And well, it when you do it a manual delete like you're described there, it leaves some other junk behind. That's why you use the cleanup tool, cleanmgr.exe, and it'll do the job for you.
Or use that utility that gets everything all together in one place that includes the cleanup.
Well, that's PC Manager.
PC Manager. That would do a really good job in this situation. You don't have to, though, because in 10 days it'll do itself. It'll get rid of itself.
Oh, automatically it'll delete that file?
Yeah, but it will leave some junk behind.
Okay.
So you'll still want to use the Clean Manager, which is basically what's being leveraged by PC Manager.
Right, right.
It's just more convenient having all these tools in one place.
So if I can see some kind of hands, who here has a machine, a primary machine, that they're not going to be able to upgrade to Windows 11? We have one. Okay, one person in the group that's going to have a primary machine. And Tom, what do you think you're going to wind up doing down the road? And down the road doesn't necessarily mean, you know, when Microsoft says no more. What are you going to wind up doing?
I'll be getting a new machine. It'll be a while, that's all.
Okay. Now, are you going to try to use some of the techniques that are available out there to get a year's extension on support?
Yes.
Okay, good. So Tom has a working solution. Harry?
2 weeks ago, I used that Flyby 11 with a little bit of help from Tim as well, and it went very smoothly. Now, I've been told not to expect updates, that there's a possibility that I won't get updates, but at least it buys me some time to see if I like, Windows 11. Not to go back to 10, but to decide, give me some time to decide what I want to buy as the ultimate replacement.
Sure. So did you really see much of a difference between 10 and 11?
Other than my anxiety level, Tim may be able to tell you, I agonized for 3 weeks, went back and forth, knowing that if I screw up my machine and it doesn't go back to 10 properly, I'm going to be very angry at myself. But then finally one day I said, you know what? I got to go for it. And it was amazing, kind of as Ron has described. Just go slowly, carefully, look at the various options, and, don't do it when you're tired. Don't do it in the middle of the night. Do it when you're awake and thinking. And I was lucky, it made no mistakes, and it did everything that it promised. And all the apps were there. It did go out and replace some of the drivers, but it didn't tell me what it replaced. But nothing didn't work.
So there you have it.
And one other thing. Anytime you're doing an upgrade of an operating system, any operating system, as soon as the install is done and everything's set up and stable, you've got to do a update to the OS immediately, because that'll bring in all the changes that have taken place since that installation image was created. And it may also bring in some additional new drivers.
Yeah, you run that, reboot, and then run anything new, and you may have to do that more than once.
Yeah, Tim is right. I forgot I did have to do that. And it reported, I think that's where it reported that it updated some drivers. I'm not sure, but I think that's where it was. So he's absolutely right. And then I created the new, what do you call that? The system restore drive. So since that point, I've added a couple of, I reactivated the sandbox, thanks to somebody in this group that had recommended that a few months ago. And I tried some software through the sandbox, so that worked. So I basically would say everything that I expected did in fact happen the way it was supposed to.
Okay. That's great. That's good. Good to hear. It
And
went well for you.
the other thing I might mention, you will want to do a new system backup using your backup software once you're sure everything's working.
Yes.
Ron, you had mentioned that you use at work, you use Windows 7 backup. And I think you said you've done some successful restores using that Windows 7 backup. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah.
Walk me through what you can remember on doing that restore. Is it as a selective? Is it a
I can do it. I've done selective restores when I'm only looking for certain files that didn't appear, like I might have had some software utilities that don't require installation, and for some reason they weren't working or didn't come over or whatever. So I could do a file-based recovery, but it's also the Windows 7 backup creates a Windows image file, which is basically like an ISO file. So I could basically replicate the not while Windows is already running, but I could boot into a pre-boot pre-OS loader like PE boot or something like that, and copy the image file back to the drive, done using the utilities that are part of that are available from the Windows 7 backup era.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's still there. It can work. It can also
If I
fail.
recall, at our last tips and tricks meeting, there was a member or an attendee that was talking about using Windows 11, Windows 11 Pro and virtual, virtual drive. And
Sure.
could you run that ISO in a virtual environment?
Yes. Yes.
It says yes.
Guaranteed. And but the thing is, when you're in the virtual machine, it's going to tell you eventually you got to have a license, and that's absolutely required for Windows. Even if I did the virtual machine on Linux operating system, I have to have a valid license for the Windows. When you don't have that, they can get nasty.
So I guess I really wasn't understanding the question, because Windows 11 allows you to boot from a virtual drive directly. You don't have to boot from the hard drive. Your Windows can be installed on the hard drive or drive, but the boot drive is actually a virtual drive, which has some advantages. One of them is virtual drives can have what's called a differencing drive. When you have a differencing drive along with your primary boot drive being a virtual drive, you can get rid of the differencing drive and your system is right back to where it was the moment you started using the differencing drive. It's like freezing your computer. Because all your changes are on the differencing drive. So all your changes that are in your registry, all the changes that were to the applications you installed. So I thought that's what you were talking about. And I'm not sure that the WIM drive can be used. It should be able to be used, but I think you have to change its. You have to make some changes to make it physically bootable. I'm not sure what. I'll find out for maybe our next meeting, because the next meeting will be how to migrate everything from your old computer to your new computer.
If I can encourage you to take a stop by tips and tricks next week. Drew is the one person from Sarasota, Florida that pops in, and he was the one who talked us through this at the last meeting.
Okay.
And it's also up on your YouTube. You may want to review the tips and tricks from last month, because he was talking about how he was doing that using Hyper-V that's built into Windows 11 Pro. I'm relaying this to you, Ron, because you're more in that realm of professionalism that you may find a need to use this. And
I'm not sure it's professionalism as much as it is insanity. But when is the tips and tricks meeting? What day?
Tuesday.
Oh, okay. I might be able to make that. Okay.
Yep. Next Tuesday. Second Tuesday of the month. So Drew may be a good contact to just talk to about that, something like that.
Okay.
I don't.
Great.
So, all right. Anyone else got any last questions or comments?
What Drew was using was a component of Macro and Reflect called ViBoot.
Right.
And it leverages the VHDs, the virtual drives capability in Windows, and it can also mount ISOs and run them.
Which is where I was kind of, when he said it makes an ISO, I was connecting those dots and saying, hey, maybe this is another way to play with this.
What Drew's experimenting with is ViBoot.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. Anyone else? No. Thank you, Ron. With that, we'll go into our topic for this evening, which was, I thought it would be appropriate timing-wise, is some people, or maybe one person, might be out shopping for a mini PC. Now, I said a mini PC because the minis as Tim has referenced to over the last year or so, have been a hot item, the selling item for PCs. These are the ones that are basically, they're built, like a notebook or a laptop type platform in terms of technology, but they scale them down to a Nook size or a small little PC that you could set on your desktop. What I was finding when I was just delving into this is there's a lot of different varieties and approaches that they're going for when they're designing these things. And basically, it has to do with what processors and architecture are they utilizing. And I don't have a clear understanding, so which is why I thought, well, we could talk about this as a group. And I found a bunch of links to them and found, I was hoping that, and I thought maybe we could just like explore some of these. I don't know if there's an interest here or not, but why not? I mean, Bob Primack, you always are using your, well, you were using your Nooks until you went to the tower. But
I have a Nook that I still maintain. It's 11th gen
okay.
Intel, and yeah, it works just fine. What I'm running into right now is that when I do presentations, I can no longer keep on trying to use a Chromebook. So what I'm going to have to upgrade to is a Windows laptop for doing mobile stuff. But what we're talking about are things that don't have batteries. They sit on your desktop.
Right.
And they're usually either the size of your palm or twice. And there's a variety of manufacturers. They've been around for years and years, and there are new ones continually coming out. Intel has abandoned the Nux, and they are being maintained by Asus, and I no longer recommend them. Geekcom is one of the places that does have ongoing development of this form factor. It's between the Raspberry Pi and your typical desktop.
Yes.
About 6 years ago, I built a mini PC.
Okay.
I bought the case at Fry Electronics, and I bought the motherboard and the processor at Micro Center in the memory.
So the problem when you're building a small one, it's harder to get the motherboard and you almost got to get it as a kit because you can't get the case to line up the way the motherboard is unless they make it that way. Because usually where they're putting the USB ports. In the one that you built, you probably found a good matchup, right?
Yeah.
But finding these little or smaller units is be harder to do. So let's see. I have one here that I brought up.
I put in chat early a recommendation too.
And well, we can explore all kinds. I have no preference on any type of model, nothing. Preconceptions other than basically the format size. And I'm finding that they're all over the place. Here's this particular one here has dual NIC cards or NIC ports in there. I don't know. Why do I need dual NICs? Someone tell me.
Some people use them to increase bandwidth and or to pass the signal through, kind of like to another computer. And that's usually the two cases. If your software will handle using the two NICs at the same time for increased bandwidth, and those are probably, check it out, 2.5 gigahertz instead of 1 gigahertz. But they could be two ones. So, but a lot of machines are coming with 2.5 gigahertz ports, and some even higher than that.
Yeah, I think wasn't Bert? Didn't you say you needed to have 3 displays? Or this one could do 3 displays.
Yes, I did. So this is another choice to be able to do
Oh,
that.
yeah, and don't particularly, I'm not saying this one, but this particular unit did show that it could do 3 displays.
Yeah, I think if you were doing these kinds of things, I would upgrade from a Ryzen 5 to a Ryzen 7.
Well, the other
Okay.
thing I want to
Yeah,
mention, since we're breaching that area, number one, AMD Ryzen type systems are at a higher premium than, say, an Intel comparable unit. So you're going to probably pay more there. Number two.
can you wait? I didn't mean to stop you, but why is AMD Ryzen's a premium over Intel at this time
Intel
when
has
it
been
used to be
having
flip-flop?
Intel has been having major problems with their CPUs, 13 and 14th gen. I don't know if they solved it for the 15th gen as yet. And at the same time, too, they've been going downhill a little bit. Management decisions of the past are catching up to them. AMD seems to have taken the lead away from Intel, and they give you more horsepower for the buck. And usually their CPUs, and except for the real high-end ones, are cheaper than a comparable Intel one.
There's something weird about this listing. It says it's a NUC box. I suspect this is a repackaged NUC,
Oh, could be.
and I am skeptical of those.
Well, here's another thing to watch for, and I'm not joking when I say it. Number one, if you look at some machines that are being reviewed even on YouTube, for AliExpress, most of those cheap ones are throwaways. You never would want to pay the cost of shipping it back to them if something's wrong with it within the warranty period, and let alone the cost of shipping it back to you. So bottom line is, if something goes wrong, you throw it away and you get a new one.
All right, so on these AMD ones, this one has 6 cores, 12 threads. As I understand, the number of cores is more important now than the number of threads.
Yes and no. Cores and threads are related. The threads is called hyperthreading, and it has 2 caches of program instruction and data per core. But when you get into some of these high-end ones with even more cores, like 8 and higher, then you start getting into E-cores in the newer processors, and those aren't as efficient. Some people will actually take and turn the E-core processors off.
Actually, the E-cores are supposed to be more efficient under lighter loads.
It depends.
And if you're a gamer, you're going to do heavier loads, so you want your performance cores or P-cores. The other thing is, most chip designs now are getting away from hyperthreading, and they're going for more cores, but less powerful cores. And that is following the ARM model.
And the way I have seen what's going on is the utilization of threads must be done by the programmer that's actually writing the software and compiling it to utilize threads, multi-thread processing, and it's not often done.
It's
only on specific applications will somebody go through the extra steps to write the multi-thread processing.
Well,
and that would be like video editing or photo editing or something that's really intense. They may take advantage of the threads, but everything else is going to take advantage of the cores.
It also
I have utilities that show that that's not the case.
Okay.
The multi-threading applies also to the OS besides the applications. If you're a person who likes to run old software, that's designed for 1 core. not multi-core. More and more over the past 5 years or so, more and more of the software developers that keep their software up to date are supporting multi-core.
Sanford, just to bring up the 3 monitor thing, you have to have a display port capability, and that's what's missing on my laptop.
Ah, okay.
So that's how you can get the a third monitor, so to speak, or more than 2 monitors.
Sure.
Well, they do make adapters for display port to another format like HDMI.
I haven't seen where that is yet.
Oh yeah, I've got them myself. I have to use them.
And there are also docks that'll do the same.
Yes.
So I pulled up another one of these smaller ones. Now this is not the Nook style, but this is still a slim mini PC. Now this is using Core Ultra.
Yeah. That's the it has the NPU coprocessor for
Okay.
AI. And
So
if
now
you-
they're listing this as an Intel Core Ultra 200 series,
Mhm.
LGA 1851. What the heck?
It is, like I said, besides the CPU, it has a coprocessor called an NPU, neural processing unit, that's for AI. And if you are heavy into AI, you might need that. If you, most of us probably will never have a computer with an NPU. So you don't need the Ultra. And this exists also in the Ryzen AMD series. So you have to look there too. Some of the processors may have an NPU built in and some don't. It costs you more with the NPU, but you have to do a lot of localized AI processing on your system to really take advantage of that.
Okay, so how many cores do you get with this thing?
They're separate. They're 2 separate sections, and they have different amount of cores.
Yeah,
Okay,
but
so as
this
we were
particular-
showing on the Ryzen one and other Intel ones, they'll have maybe 4 cores, 8 threads, or
No,
6
you'll
cores and 12 threads, or something like
anything
that.
that runs 11.
What's going on with this one?
11 starts in Intel with the 8th generation, 6 cores or more. And it used to be for the 8th and 9th limited CPUs with hyper-threading. But the 10th on, they have hyper-threading on just about not only the i9, i7, and i5, they may even have it on the i3, but I haven't checked that one out.
All right. Well, what's this? Oh, the highest core count is in the Ultra 9. It's
Yes.
24 cores.
Right.
Woo!
Well, that's a high-end processor.
Yeah, but that's that one. That doesn't tell me this particular one that I called up. How many cores?
Oh, well, you can do
Here it is.
the specifications of that processor, and it should tell you. Each processor has a specific ID, and you have to look up the specific ID.
Core Arrow Lake S. I guess when I started seeing this as I was doing a little digging into these smaller PCs, and I saw this Ultra stuff here, they threw a whole new architecture at me
Correct.
that I just don't understand yet
Well,
in relationship to the other ones, other than the fact that it's got the neural processor in there.
Ultra type and with an NPU, including AMD's processors, only started last year. So unless you keep up on the hardware, yeah, this is all new to you, and you got a lot to learn.
I know I got me and everybody else does.
No,
They have
because, like I said, most people, if they are even in using AI much, they don't need the NPU because I can bring up AI to do anything I want right through any browser on any computer, even old ones that are running 10.
So if you look at this, Sanford,
Yes.
the NPUs don't count as cores.
Right.
Okay.
Part of that is because they don't process like a core does. They're all parallel processing, whereas cores don't use parallel processing necessarily. So Intel came out with the Ultras after Microsoft cut a deal with the Snapdragon people to create Snapdragon AI Windows computers. And Intel was left behind because it didn't have anything that was AI ready. So they came out with Ultra, and they just jammed some NPUs on the die or next to the die for the CPU, and it started incorporating it into a new new motherboards. Okay. So so they're going to be two different things. The NPUs won't make Excel run any faster. They're not going to make Word run any faster. They're probably not going to make your browser run any faster. I can't imagine how it would. So the NPUs are kind of like the GPUs in some respects.
Mm-hmm.
They're just a separate set of processing that is sucking up memory or has its own memory and is able to use some of these new tools like AI if the AI recognizes the NPU.
And when you're in an NPU environment, basically you are have to have a NPU that does 45 teraflops per second. Now,
Yep.
I'll let you figure out what a teraflop is on your own.
I wear them on my feet. they have the little bar that goes between the toes.
That's right.
They walk on Earth, so that's why they're called teraflops.
It's like flipping pancakes. Only at 45 tera, and tera is way above gigahertz.
Okay, so Tim, you said you had a PC that you wanted to show us?
It's in you have it in the chat. I put the information in the chat.
Okay.
I know. I don't
No,
see.
didn't make it there.
Well, I sent it, but I don't know.
It says Mini Forum MS-A2.
That's right.
You sent it to Sanford, but not to everybody.
Okay.
That's right.
So is that a link or is that?
That's the model, make and model.
Okay.
Go to Amazon and look it up.
So I got to go look it up. Okay. You can send me a link.
Okay, so that was a message just to Sanford.
Yes.
Yeah, just to me.
Okay.
All right. There's the Minis form. And let me share this. Okay. And
Scroll down.
Tim, tell us, this
Scroll
is
down.
also a Ryzen based one.
Yeah, go scroll down.
It's a Ryzen 9.
Yes. Keep going. This gives you all the information you want.
Okay, so you got dual 2.0. It's got a 10 gigabit LAN too.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I can't imagine why you would need to move that much data. It's crazy.
Some people use these as servers.
And also high-end gamers in some
Oh, yeah.
instances.
But you got to have a network that's capable of handling that. Wow.
Yeah,
I use it. Go ahead.
Some gamers do live streaming and Discord while they're gaming. Now I interrupted somebody.
I was just going to say, I use it on my 14.4 modem.
Well, don't go to AOL anymore because they turned it off.
Yeah.
$12 terabytes of storage. Ooh, baby.
Oh, and one thing about this, if I remember correctly, it has an odd amount of maximum memory of 96 gigabytes. Now that's hilarious because you only get two SODIMM sockets, which is the majority of machines, and they come in like 2 8 gigs or 2 16 gigs modules. That's 32 gigs on the 16s, or 2 32 gigs. That's 64 gigabytes total. Or you got to get 2 64 gig RAM modules. That's 128 gigs, but you can only access up to 96 gigs. Go figure that one out. How you get to use that extra 32 gigs of RAM you bought that cost you probably in the neighborhood of $300.
Get a second processor in there.
Yeah.
You also need some lanes.
Yeah, I'm wondering with that much whether the memory is tied to the CPU like they are on servers.
Don't know.
Where you can have lots of RAM, but they have to be split between the two CPUs.
I don't think this has dual CPUs.
Oh, it doesn't. Okay.
I think it's single.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not saying it has it. I'm just saying this may derive from that server configuration that Ron alluded to.
Now, note too, on that screen there, there's 3 options here. Let's go top here. CPU. There's 2 different processors you can get. And then you also have right below it, you can get bare bones, meaning you provide your own memory, you provide your own storage, or a 64 gig built in with a terabyte SSD, or what's in purple is 32 gigs of RAM and 1 terabyte SSD. So the price is for the 32 gigabytes unless you want to buy it with 64. Then the price goes up.
Of course. As with all. All right. So Tim likes this particular system. Someone else have one they'd like us to bring up? Yes, Harry. Go ahead and pull it up on your screen and share your screen.
So I can just send you the link if you want to click on it.
Well, you could do it. Pull up the screen, your link on your end. And then at the very bottom in green, it'll say share.
Okay, hold on 1 second. Let me get to it myself.
This is a learning experience for everybody.
Hold on 1 second.
Ron, are you okay?
I'm fine.
What time do you go home, Ron?
I will have to leave in 5 minutes.
In 5 minutes, okay.
Yeah.
Don't let us keep you if you have to go.
Oh, I wouldn't think of it.
And are you heavily involved in that temporary exhibit? The museum?
No, I am not. I'm no longer with the Holocaust Museum, except as a member. But I have been there because it just opened, and it's pretty amazing what you can do in a temporary exhibit. They have a lot of holographic material, so you're looking at things as if they were 3D, and they also do a lot of VR.
Impressive. And you were all part of that?
I was when it was at the museum, when it was at the physical museum.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Harry, are you ready? There you go. Harry's doing it.
So
Cool.
Look at that, Harry. Great job.
So obviously these kinds of units don't compare to what Tim was describing, but for I don't do gaming, that kind of thing. For me, this seems to be the replacement for my i5 8500 when we get to that point. And among the questions that I have, if people want to weigh in, is there an advantage to me to have that U format, the low power, rather than the H format? They're in the same price, give or take $20 either way.
If you can, always go with the higher form factor, because you can fit additional stuff in there in most of these higher form factors.
I think with the I could be wrong, but with the 6800, I think they're the same size. It's the power. The H is like 45 watts, and the U is maybe 30 watts.
Yeah, well, you got to understand, in these minis, they usually mimic, so to speak, a laptop. But there are two styles of laptops for the most part, without getting into the high-end gamer and workstation class. And that's a low wattage one that runs about 25 to 30 watts normally. It uses a 65 watt power brick. Then they go up to the next level, which can be 45 to 65 watts, and you have to use a 90 watt power supply. So depending on how much you run them, it's going to affect your electric bill. How much depends on how much you use your computer, how long it's turned on. Some people leave, about 50% of the people turn their computers off when they're done, and 50% of the people will leave their computers on all night and 24 hours a day, and maybe once every week or 10 days they reboot the computer, because otherwise Windows gets a little wonky.
Yeah.
To put it
Well,
mildly.
that's what I was alluding to, the low power and the high power, if anybody has any opinion. The second part of that is the DDR5, for me, is probably overkill, but I figured let's give it a try. Let's see how it compares to the DDR4. But the low power one here apparently is soldered. It's permanently installed.
Right.
With DDR5 is swappable.
Any CPU with a U at the end means it's soldered in, period. You can't change it. Now, I have used fives and sevens, and I've even used threes, and get on AMD some impressive performance and capability. In the minis that I've got, they're different. They're a different style. They do have changeable CPUs that are either 35 watt or 65 watt. And I've been able to run meetings with either one with no problem, even as a host. And the host of a Zoom meeting has extra taxation of resources when they are being hosting. But when they are a regular attendee like I am right now, almost anything works. And I mean almost anything, because it's Zoom is not that taxing on a regular attendee's computer.
Yeah, no, we were talking here about the RAM being soldered in versus not being soldered in. It's usually preferable not to have the RAM soldered in.
That's
So that would argue in favor of the DDR5. Yeah, the DDR5.
Yeah, not being soldered in at least gives you the option that you could upgrade it down the line.
Yes.
Will you? Most likely not.
At 32 gig,
32
it's
gigs.
unlikely you're going to go up to 64.
Right, because you won't want to throw away the 216s that are going to be in there.
Right.
So,
And
you know,
and the average user seldom ever upgrades their RAM memory. They don't
Right,
even
which-
often do the storage upgrade unless they're so squeezed out of storage space, they're forced to.
which
And
is
with
kind
one,
of, Harry, that's kind of why I presented that information as saying, you know, the fact if it's soldered in versus not, if you get 32 gig, I wouldn't even worry about it.
And the SSD at 1 terabyte, not likely to need to be upgraded, but it might need to be replaced.
Now, some of these minis, a few, not very many, I don't think this is one of them. They can sometimes come with the ability to handle more than one NVMe drive. Some can go as high that I've seen up to 4 NVM drives, but they're rare and they are costly. But there is another factor in some of the cheap minis that are out there. Our normal NVMe memory modules for storage are 3x4, 4x4, 5x4. The 4 at the end means 4 channels to have data flow in and out of the storage device. But there are both drives that have 2 instead of the 4, which means only 2 channels, and they'll be lower performance. But there are some machines I have seen ads for that actually have NVMe, but they only allow for 1 channel access. And that's probably as slow or slower than an old-fashioned SATA drive. Not a joke. You got to really look at the specs because you can get burned bad.
Isn't a regular SSD connection a single channel?
No,
How many channels are on an SSD connection?
the
4
average
typically.
is 4.
4?
Yes.
Okay.
But they do make models of the machine with 2. They also make SSDs with 2 channels only. And
Here-
there's even
Henry, can you, or Harry, can you scroll down a little so we can see what the what it says here for storage? Does it tell you?
Storage
does.
is near the top.
Two 4 terabytes.
Yeah,
PC
it doesn't tell you what Tim was referring to, how many channels.
yeah, you'd have to look up the individual model if they give you enough information to look it up to find out, is this a 3x4, a 4x4, or a 5x4? And if it's,
Item details.
it
No,
might
they
be,
don't.
it
They
might,
don't.
it might be for some people a minor detail, but it can make a big difference in performance.
Amazon sometimes doesn't give you all the information.
Right. And sometimes they give you the ability to ask the seller, if it's not them directly, but a third party seller, what comes in it. And
Yeah, this is Beelink itself. Yeah.
I would think these are either 4x4 or 5x4. You don't want any that ends with a 2 instead of a 4.
Yeah.
Where are you talking about this end in 2? Where's that number displayed?
In the small print on the SSD
On the SSD itself.
It's
Oh,
on the
okay.
SSD, and also some machine specifications will tell you that it's using 2 channels, not 4, or 1
Right.
channel, not 4. But
guess
otherwise, it's defaulted to 4.
It may not be something that they would advertise on these.
Probably not.
Probably not.
So
Okay, so these, so
I'm gonna-
little
go ahead.
format devices like this, what advantage do they have for the end user?
The small footprint, easy mobility outside the fact that you have to have a keyboard, a mouse, and a monitor. But these units are mountable on the back of the monitor. So it works
Right.
like an all-in-one computer. The
And
difference
the price
with
range, they tend to be, these tend to be in the 300 to 400 range.
Yeah, right.
See, with a real all-in-one called an AIO machine, they have a laptop motherboard inside the machine, limited capabilities of expansion and putting in extra drives, stuff like that. Whereas these minis, like I say, there are some that'll give you the ability to have more than 1 drive in the system. They can mount to the back of a monitor. You, if the unit dies or you want a major upgrade in hardware, you can get another mini and switch them and continue on. With an AIO, you usually cannot do that unless you're a techie type person and you can find a proper laptop motherboard for sale that you can put in place of the one that's in the AIO machine.
So
Okay.
let me bring up a slightly different perspective on these mini
Okay.
PCs.
Harry, you want to stop sharing your screen? So, Ron,
So one of the things we talked about what kind of a power supply is on there. If you intend to power anything off of USB from these systems, they need a power supply to provide the USB power that's going to power whatever it is that you're doing. So they're already sucking power probably to the max of what the power supply is that's put in there. So you may not be able to power too much else. Like I want to charge my phone, or I want to charge my TV, or I want to self-power an external hard drive. So it's one of the things to consider is how much power is going in. The other thing, and this is the problem that we've had with a number of different small form factor computers, is how much heat they put out. And do they overheat readily? So I can't tell you whether B is a good company for throwing heat off properly, or if it's not. But that'd be the only other thing. And those are both related to power.
Well, that brings up, seriously, this brings up 2 more points. Number 1, check very carefully any mini-form unit as to its ventilation. There are models out there that have very poor ventilation. Number 2, there are a few models, instead of having the external power brick to provide the power to the unit, they have the power supply inside the case and you plug in the AC line. That means the power supplies heat along with your CPU, your RAM memory, and your storage device are all accumulative. And it's got to have great ventilation.
Yeah, ironically, his point about the USB ports, the tower I'm currently using has 5 3.2s, so I'm a little bit spoiled. And even there, I use 2 powered buses. So I know that I'll have to take both of those powered buses to this portable unit to get, more USB ports.
Well,
so that's a good point.
USB ports on any computer only allow up to 0.5 amp. And that's it. If you try to exceed 0.5 amp, it's going to blow a fuse on the motherboard, and that can be costly to have repaired.
By the way, guys, the previous Beelink that we were asking, was it 4 lanes? It is a by 4.
Wow,
I
you were
figured it
able to
was.
dig that out of there.
It's in the listing.
Oh, okay.
It's
Thank you.
Usually, if it doesn't specify 4 lanes, it's a default because that's the vast majority. Usually, if it's restricted to 2 lanes or 1 lane, they will specify that information. If they don't, you can throw it back at them and make sure you hit them in the head hard.
Yeah, it says PCIe 4.0 by 4 NVMe SSD.
That's what I figured. It'd either be these modern recent machines will be 4x4 or 5x4, but the other issue is older machines that you can buy on the used market may only be 3x4.
Yeah. Now, in this one you're currently displaying, we can't see that.
Right.
We don't know which SSDs they're using. We don't know what brand they are.
Right.
We don't know the brand in the other one.
And the bad part is some of the parts could vary in the production line as to what make and model of RAM chips and or storage devices you get in an individual machine. That's why it's not advertised.
Yeah, well, in my NUC, the OEM drive was from a mainland China company, and it failed quite rapidly.
Yeah, some of them will, because they're trying to undercut the normal market costs. That's why I said, if you look at AliExpress reviews in YouTube, you're going to find out there's a lot of machines from about $140 to under $200, and they're basically throwaway machines. If they work good for you for a while, great. If it lasts over a year, great. If it lasts as much as 5 years, you've got all the value out of that machine.
Does anyone else have a machine they'd like us to review?
I only buy mostly used gear that has come out of businesses. So I have business class machines and versus consumer class. Now, a lot of these machines here usually meet to some degree business class features that are not in normal consumer class machines.
Okay.
A good
Are the
example
ones you're
is,
talking about refurbished, or you do the refurbishing?
pardon?
Generally, are they refurbished, the machines, or you do the refurbishing?
I buy both. So sometimes if I get a good deal on a refurbished, I'll take that over a plain used. But I'm also a tech person. I will get bare bones systems because I may already have the parts I need to put in and go with it. The machines I use, as an example, and I've shown this on many times before on meetings. This is a HP model. There's also Lenovo, Asus, and some others. This has the front panel. You got some USB ports. You got head jack for 3.5 millimeter jack. You've got the back here. This one has an external antenna versus an internal one, and you get multi-ports for displays. You get also some optional port that allows you to put in a USB-C card, HDMI card, display port card.
Do you have a model number for that one to put in the chat so we could look it up?
Well, this is a used model. This is not new. This is
Well, I know since you were
This-
bringing it up
okay,
and showing it to
you
us.
have HP Elite 800, also HP Pro Desk 400, 600 models, and there's also an HP 705 and I think an 805. Those use a Ryzen G chip that is second generation. They're usually a 5 or a 3 model. So it'd be like a Ryzen 3 2000 series or a Ryzen 5 2000 series. And
Okay.
some of the newer ones are Ryzen 3 and 5 maybe a 7 too in the 3000 series. So they're a bit dated, but these usually came out of businesses like doctor's offices, as an example. And these units have a replaceable CPU chip. It's socketed. And you either have a 35 watt model. This is usually indicated by having a solid top here, or it's got a perforated top, and that means you have a copper heat sink. It's 65 watt CPU for more horsepower, but it generates more heat.
Okay. All right. I want to just keep on our subject here. Has anyone else got any small form factor PCs they want to present to the group?
The only other one that I know of, and
No,
I'm not
okay.
recommending it, is there are Chromebook models out there, like a CN65 model. It's 8th gen processor. It's larger than the regular minis, which are about a 5x5 square by an inch and a quarter to 3 inches high. In the Chromebook one, it's a 6x6 format by an inch and a quarter high. The one I was showing is 7-inch by 7-inch by inch and a quarter high. And I can have models that have 2 or 3 drives in them, besides a changeable CPU and 2 memory modules.
Are these Chromebooks or Chromeboxes?
Chromebox, I think it's by Asus. I'm not positive of that.
Yeah.
Model CN5. 65, excuse me. No, it is CN5.
CN5?
It's a Chromebox 3 CN65. That's what it is.
65.
And those can be converted to Linux, and if it's got an 8th gen or better, the darn things will even run 11.
Okay. Anyone else got any last comments? If not, I'm going to stop the recording and conclude